Hey everybody, Skipper here. This week on Fade to Obsidian, we are discussing chapters 59 to 74 of Dark Age. You may know this is probably the most difficult section of the entire series thus far. We have Badger on to help us through it. And that meant that it ended up being a 4-hour episode. So we are dividing it into two parts. This first part will be focused on the Darrow and Lysander part of it, violence and death and our strong language, as always. But that second part that you can look forward to tomorrow is Lyria and Ephraim and does deal with the death of Ulysses. We want everyone to know that we care about you. We love you. There is no therapy in space, but there is here on Earth. If you are dealing with grief in any capacity, but especially over a child, watch with care these episodes. The first one we only kind of make reference to, but that second one will get difficult. Thank you, Howlers, and enjoy this first segment. Welcome, everybody, to Fade to Obsidian, your podcast of the Red Rising universe about relationships and spaceships. I, as always, am Skipper, joined, as always, by Crescent, and we get Badger back. Welcome back, Badger.
Hello.
As always, we get you for the trauma episodes, and we are so sorry, but so thankful that you agree to join us for that.
It's my pleasure to join you. Thank you.
What are you drinking tonight?
Just bourbon. You know, that's, I feel like, Red Rising standard for me across the series.
Fair.
A full glass of it.
Yeah.
And more on deck.
It is interesting that maybe it's just because the really only called out alcohol in the series is Lauren's Lagavulin, that we all went, Red Rising, it's whiskey. That's this isn't a beer book. This isn't a wine book. It's a whiskey book.
Yeah, don't be sacrilegious. They only have whiskey in the Vale.
Don't be like Lysander with his Shiraz.
Or his Freilich and vodka juice. Or vodka and Freilich juice, whatever. I don't know what the fuck he says. Some stupid.
Right.
Well, stupid Lysander thing.
Crescent, what whiskey are you drinking?
I just picked this up today. It's an Ardbeg special release, and it's because things get a little bit hardcore today.
Nice.
And then I have a peach sour smoothie for when I need a break from the trauma.
Just make it go down a lot easier. I am going to apologize for my beer. Straight up. Going to fully apologize for this one. I did not go out of my way for this beer. I happen to have it. I've been looking at it for a few episodes, and I knew this was the one that I very unfortunately have to bring it out. The brewery is Five Paddles Brewing, and it is called Cradle to Grave. I'm so sorry. It's even got like a child holding a balloon of a skull on it.
Don't laugh, Badger.
It's 11.9%, so it's really going to get me through this episode. It's a quadruple IPA. Yeah. And then my second one.
I'm down. I'm out.
Yeah, I deserve that. We'll tell Salem to kick me out of the den for a little bit for this, but it was too perfect. It was in my fridge. I was like, oh, which death? And then at some point I was like, oh, I know which death. I know.
There's only one.
Yeah.
Hey, in Skipper's defense, she did message me, is this too much? And I went, nah, that's Howler energy.
It's really
perfect.
Mm-hmm. It's really good. And then to wash that down for when I need something else, I've got Starry Night. Also an appropriate name, but a lot more cheerful. By Bob
My
Cajun brewing
something else
company.
is a hydro inspired, not just
Ooh,
water hydration beverage. She sent
nice.
me like electrolyte packages, and then I've
Nice.
been cold
Mm,
brewing tea on top of it. So it's like a peach honey cold brew tea with uh, like lemon berry electrolytes. So
nice.
hydrate before you dehydrate. Don't go
Yes.
until
I
the dawn
definitely don't have water. Should remember that at some
empty-handed.
point.
Yeah.
You'll have your tears.
True.
That's
Those
right.
have salt in them. It's like electrolytes.
There you go.
Yeah, that's how that works. Yeah, it's gonna be an episode. Uh, well, so we kind of mentioned that we're gonna do Darrow and Lysander together because they match up nicely and they're back and forth, and then we get Lyria and Ephraim together because they match up nicely. But overall, how are we feeling at this point in the book? How are we? What are our vibes at? Let's do a
I
pulse
I
check.
really I really really fucking hate that Lysander made his way into the Rising camp,
Mm,
the Republic camp. Uh, I hate it. That's
yeah.
like top probably 5 least favorite things in the book.
Okay.
Yeah, immediate
It's
ick.
like it's just it's so gross. Like Lysander's just like, yes, I did this amazing thing for you. Here,
Yeah.
be happy with me. And then you're like, oh no, what's gonna happen?
Yeah.
Um,
But
I,
outside of that, and
I'm
Ulysses,
trying to think of like, I think at this point, I was like, okay, right? First read through, I was doing okay. I had recovered from the day of red doves.
Yep.
Um, I knew more shit was coming. Um, Tail end of the last chapter, we had Severo's Palace, so I was like, oh, yeah, we're good, it's good, right? And so I was fine through this part. Yes, immediate ick, right? So if we're tackling through the Darrow Lysander chunk, hated it, but was fine.
Yeah.
Hated it, was fine. There are some redeeming moments. Some interesting
yeah,
things happen.
Yeah.
Skip?
seeing Darrow through Lysander's eyes again is
Yeah.
pretty dope.
I
Well, that's it.
totally
Is
want to talk
that's
about
what I
That
really like.
that
Is
is the sickest moment.
and that's like the fact that we get at this point two stories happening rather than all spread out that we, especially during Iron Gold, we're used to, and even in this one we're used to at least. I mean, Darrow and Lysander have been close in most of this, but Ephraim and Lyria have been super. Like, I like that the stories are now coming together. You can kind of see what's happening. That's to me a really cool portion of this. And I do like I'm mad, and we'll talk more when we get into it about like just that Lysander was able to get into infiltrate the Howlers. But I do like the back and forth, like the storytelling portion of it. I do really
Oh, for
like
sure.
that back and forth. And even the very small glimpse, which we had back in Iron Gold with Ephraim and Lyria, but even at the end of this, when we get the spoil just a little bit for the end of this section, the I'm sending out the call and then Ephraim getting the call. Like I just really like those from the different like the storytelling point of view. Um, but it it I don't love that's not true. I actually kind of really like this section. Not the sadness of it, but it's a lot of action packed, a lot of everyone being independent for themselves and having to act on what is best for the greater good, not necessarily themselves, but having a lot more independence. Like we see that from Lyria, that she finally comes into her own. Volga even comes into her own. I mean, Victor's always been on Victor knows who she is, but
Yeah.
but we see kind of Lysander. His is more training from when he's a kid, but knowing, okay, what steps do I take to survive this? And Darrow, on the other hand, taking a step back and still needing to protect everybody, but we're getting more tired, weary Darrow. But yeah, it's just interesting of how we see all of our main characters throughout all of this. Alexander, we've never really seen him without Darrow treating him like a child. And so we get to see a little bit of that. And then Darrow once again treating him like a child. But yeah, like it's really cool storytelling for each character is what I like in this section here.
That was something that took away as well. Like some of the development of the characters who have been important secondary characters, like Lyria. That was something I took away. And even Pax, like some of my favorite scenes of this
Yes.
segment happen, like that last chapter or two, are really, really good.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I totally didn't even mention that. Yeah, Pax for sure becomes his own person. And even like there's not much mentioned about Electra in this portion, but you get that like her and Ephraim are kind of closer in this, and you're getting filled out with her. But I feel like for her, it's the Victor thing of like, what character development is there to be done when you are super confident and know who you are, right? Like you
The
got,
Apex.
yeah. But she'll be fine. Electra will be fine. But yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff and world building in this. We get a lot of what's happening on Mercury and what Erebos
And
actually
Mars.
looks like, and then Mars of what's happening in
Mhm.
this camp, in this mine. And even I would go as far as to look at the difference between the two of Erebos is this giant grand city that, we brought up last time, like the Library of Alexandria, but in my head, it does very much an ancient, I know it's new, but gets the vibes of like those strong ancient European cities in comparison to the mines that we get very detailed now. Like for Darrow, we got like, yeah, the mines exist. Yeah, we go down. This time we're like, this is what the jail looks like. This is what this is how many floors. This is, right? Like it's much more elaborate in this portion. So it's really cool world building and seeing those two different worlds compared side by side. Yeah. I like it.
Shall we jump in?
Let's jump in.
Yeah, I guess we gotta.
Um so what this portion starts and
With
Lysander's in a
Lysander getting
cave.
tortured.
Yes! Come on, let's just stay there.
Top 5 favorite moments.
Yeah.
Lysander tortured by technically his own side.
Yep.
His inner monologue feels so fucking sociopathic to me at this point in time. I mean, it does
yeah.
the whole time, but he's like, he's analyzing everything. And that could also be a coping mechanism, but for the fact that he is saving pieces. He's always holding game pieces in reserve to be used at optimal moments, such as the reveal of, hey guys, I'm actually on your side, until he meets Atlas. He didn't do it 5 times. He went, what, 5 times? 7, 6, 7 times? I can't remember. 5, 6, 7 times, somewhere in there. He's already been, completely, I can't remember all the things, but they used the time dilation on him. They chopped off.
Ruined, I think, is probably the word.
Yeah, ruined him. And then his he's thinking about reserving the reveal of who he is until he gets to be face to face with Atlas. And also he's thinking about my torture binds me to the group. He's playing literally both sides.
He's a politician, man. You
Yeah.
gotta give him like
Yeah, he
to
sure
the
is slimy as
core.
fuck.
Uh, like he knows how to play the game, and unfortunately is too good at it. But
Yeah,
yeah,
unfortunately, he had a very good teacher when he was younger.
yes, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so definitely part of him analyzing is, when he's running up and down the stairs with his eyes closed, and Octavia tells him your mind has to digest and analyze latently. I think that's partly being illustrated with this,
Mm,
but him making the comments is not latent. Like that's active.
yeah.
If I gave it to them, what would they do with it? That's him talking about his name as he's apart from the torture, looking at the golds and grays that are torturing him and viewing them as inferior to Atlas. And it's occurring to me now as I'm saying this, Atlas knew what was going on the whole. He tortured him
Oh yeah, Atlas knew right
the
away.
whole time. Right. He was not like, oh my goodness, Lysander, what are you doing here? Oh, so sorry. Let me please take you to my room. He didn't even acknowledge anything, which I
Yeah.
could see being tactical in terms of his men.
Yeah.
Keep it secret from the troops. Let's do this in private. Which also leads me to wonder how much of what Lysander had planned he anticipated.
Mm. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we know that uh, he knows that Lysander's planning on attacking him. Um, so it wouldn't shock me if it's lots. And really, like, there's really only one way for Lysander to go with it if he's not going to go with, like, actively on Atlas's side. Like, if he wants to be kind of on the Republic soldiers' side,
Yeah.
or at least appear to be. Like, there's really only one way he can go, is like helping them escape and
Yeah.
stealing Atlas.
Um, I think that's all very, very interesting. There is that scene, and there's a couple scenes when he's still actually in the torture chamber, but I'll come back to them because we're kind of in the he's met Atlas part, and he is point for point going over how he views Atlas, from the
Mm-hmm.
physical to the mental characteristics to the carriage to the perception of how he shows up, the public perception versus the private perception. Uh, he has black hair. Did you
Yeah.
pick up on that?
Yep.
I didn't pick up on that. Black hair with gold streaks instead of just pure gold.
Mm.
Yep.
Interesting.
So did
Um,
Romulus.
Right.
So did
Oh,
That's
so
a
it's
Diamond.
like a thing of
genetic
the rim.
trait.
It's definitely a Rim thing
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
because they're canonically Japanese and South African.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and the Sauds, I think, are Middle Eastern as well, right?
Yeah, I don't know if that's ever, like, specifically said, but
I think somewhere I read that one time, but who knows?
It's in the one tweet Pierce sometimes said. He loves to do that to us. Yeah. I don't know. I find it really interesting, Lysander looking at Atlas, and I mean, we saw this when saw Atalantia and Calendora, where he's like, basically like, this is my dad's best friend, Right? Like, he's got this still almost naivety, even to the point of it's like Atlas has to call out when he's like, oh yeah, Ajax tried to kill me, whatever. Um, and Atlas is like, why do you trust me? Well, you're my dad's best friend. Yeah, but he, like, Ajax is my son. Like,
Yeah.
it's one of those, like, Lysander still thinks himself so important that a father will just like throw aside, and like he can read the room, he gets it a little bit, but it is really interesting to me that it's like, but you haven't seen this guy in 10 years, like you don't know him, you don't know any of these people, but you're still so reliant on like, it's my dad's best friend. Like,
Just the archetypes
yeah,
of the people. He knows them like you can study a biological, like you could study biology, you can pull up a species description, you can memorize what's in a textbook. And he also has some firsthand knowledge of them, but because of that gap of 10 years, I feel like it has receded somewhat in intimacy into that place of it being sort of just an intellectual understanding of who they are
yeah,
rather than like it's like I'm a robot and I understand you versus I'm a human and I understand you.
yeah,
That empathy component, that intimacy component seems to be really fucking missing from him. Now fair, okay, like he got really fucked over in the parental and caretaker department to learn those things from somebody. I get that. Okay, sure. Okay. However, when he was reading Atlas and Atlas was like, why don't you pump your brakes unless you want me to do that to you? I was like, Shh, what? So bad.
Yep.
Please.
yes,
Yeah, I was really hoping for that.
yeah,
Big time. Let's see. My other.
yeah. Which that alone, just to focus in half a second of like, so the mind's eye can detect the mind's eye. Like that to me is an interesting. I guess you
When you
have your
say that,
self
what do you mean?
awareness with like, well, he's using his mind's eye against Atlas, and Atlas goes, I can do that right back to you. And
Yeah.
that to me, it's like, so I guess you probably it's because you have that self awareness of like, but like I don't know, it's such a bizarre that I'm like, I just
Yeah,
want to
it's
know so
I
much
feel
about
like
the mind's eye.
it's
But
almost
like,
uh, a hyper uh like a hyper aggressive like staring response. Like you know how if somebody's looking at you across the room you can kind of feel it?
yeah,
Yeah. I imagine that they're so much more aware of their surroundings that
yeah,
the intense viewing of the mind's eye would be picked up by the mind's eye.
yeah, okay. Yeah, that just to me was such a like, ooh, interesting. But then interesting that I mean, and maybe Atlas wasn't actively doing it at the time. That like Lysander didn't detect it back because he's like taken aback of
Yeah.
like, no, no, I was her only student. Like, no, it was me. And it's like,
Yeah.
were you, baby? Were you?
I thought that was really because in the discussion, in the greater discussion of where the series is going, I know you guys know more than me, but we're going to pretend like you don't. And there's a lot of discussion and a lot of hype around the mind's eye, but there's the Black Cathedral reference that Virginia makes when she's sitting there. She's like, Octavia came up here and she would do the mind's eye thing and like, big deal. You know,
Yeah.
she's pretty dismissive of it as if she already knows and it's like a cool party trick. I got, that's in my back pocket. I've moved on
I
to
got
better
Mustang
things.
shit. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I therefore assume that Pax already has this sort of training
Yeah.
through Mustang. And then this is another reference to me because he references how Apollonius is after the mind's eye in reference to Atlas basically having the mind's eye too. again, we have somebody who is saying, like, don't think you're special that you have this thing. Yeah, sure, you can do it, but I can do it too.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, I think to me, that sticks out as like a note to self. Keep an eye on that.
Keep a mind's
But
eye on that.
keep a mind's eye on that, which I do you guys do this? I mean, there's like all kinds of, I do this kind of exercises myself. I have for many, many years because I've always wanted to like be a Bene Gesserit. So I've always thought, ever since reading Dune, like, oh, wouldn't it be really cool if it had super awesome powers of the mind? And so I try pick up tools that I can use to be very aware of
Yeah.
surrounding catalog stuff. Be let it sit until I need it. I mean, I'm not on this level, but I
Yeah.
try. Do you guys do that?
No, I'm too
Not
like
not
self-absorbed.
actively.
Yeah. No, I like that, and I get that I'm like, yeah, I'm sure there's definitely people that are more self-aware that like I'm out somewhere and they'll be
Oh yeah.
like, oh, look at that, and you're like, how
What
did
the
you
fuck are you talking
notice
about?
it? Yeah, like what? But I am oblivious to most things.
I think my son has it. It's more more than me already. Before we get too far away from the torture chamber where he
Yeah.
was with the group, um, that moment that he has where he's like, "Oh, I've met Reds and Browns who are happier," and the loyal Grays and all of that stuff. I just wanted to point out again this whole debate about where Lysander falls in the scheme of things, and this question of like nobility and whatnot that keeps getting brought up at redemption arc. He doesn't, in my opinion, he does not have a clue. Truly, how can you be so incisive to be able to pick apart someone like Atlas
Mm-hmm.
and not recognize that when you are making the judgment that people of lesser stations than you are happy when you're observing them, that that is not through the filter of a power dynamic.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, and that's that's pretty gross. Like, sure, maybe you think that they're happy because they have to act happy so that you don't get mad at them.
Well,
Like,
there's that portion, and I would say also like the poor, and we'll see this later in the chapters that there are the people that then swear allegiance, the low and mid colors swear
yeah,
allegiance to him, but those are people that are in higher positions. They're not in the
yeah,
mines. The
yeah,
Reds who
exactly.
are working, even if you are janitorial staff or labor, if you are working in a castle, right? Like, so let's, I don't know, somehow put this into, it's hard because we don't quite have the same, like, we obviously have low class and higher class in today's world, but not 16 levels or however many colors it is. But
14.
14 plus the low reds versus the high reds versus whatever. Anyway, like a maid in Buckingham Palace is probably making in this day and age 100,000 plus dollars. Like, let's put in out of pounds, $100,000 a year. A maid in a motel down the street, sure, they have the same job, but that one who's working, you know, well, now I'm doing a year versus, but like, let's say $7 an hour or whatever that minimum wage is. Like, they are going to have different positions on life.
That's less than twenty
But
eight
Yeah,
thousand dollars a year. It's
yeah,
like
okay, so a
it's between 12
quarter.
or
it's
15.
yeah, it's 14 ish,
Yeah, so
2080 working hours in a year.
Okay, that was quick math, man. Um, I'm just throwing numbers
That's what
out
you get
here.
when you're hourly.
I'm waiting for someone to spot check and go, actually, a maid in Buckingham Palace makes like 100,000 pounds, which is double that dollars. But anyway, like, so yeah, sure. If you live in Buckingham Palace, you think that all maids are happy because they're the highest position of that job, or in this case, of that color. So those people surrounding Lysander might be happy, and they might have, not the Obsidians, but the ones who are working alongside him, some of the Reds and the Browns. Look at Lyria in the Telemanus family. If that's all she knew was Lyria in the Telemanus family, she'd be happy. We've seen that the other servants were all happy, but that's not the real world. And a lot of these golds are not seeing these minds, these everything else, that he's like, oh no, I don't know why you freed them. They're fine. And it's like, well, you're not looking at the people who are actually at the bottom. You're only looking at the ones that are surrounded by you. And maybe, as you say, those people might not even be happy. They're just, I mean, I'm sure the people who worked for the Grimaces aren't happy. But I could have seen if the Telemanus said, I don't know what your issue is, because they look like people that, even though they know the golds are above, treated with respect. So why? But it's them then showing, like, well, this is what the mines are like, that it becomes a whole other world. And Lysander has not ever seen the mines. He has not ever seen the dregs of a city, like go to Phobos, where you've got all the crime syndicate. Lysander doesn't know
Yeah.
that. So he genuinely is so in his own world, which is, I think, I appreciate in this moment, draw a connection that I'm only just making, is when Pax asks Lyria, tell me what the mines are like. I think
Yeah.
that shows how much more exposed, even though Pax says people won't tell me about it, he knows that there was horrors happening. And Lyria in that moment doesn't understand why he wants to know. But Lysander would never have asked someone of like, tell me the horrors of this solar system. But Pax, at least in, to compare the sovereign's child, basically, 10-year-old to 10-year-old, Pax at least is trying to understand where all the colors are coming from and all the different levels of colors, the low reds versus the high reds versus everybody else. And Lysander just doesn't get it. He's like, everyone I've met has always been happy. It's like, yeah, I'm sure if you survey the staff at Buckingham Palace, they're probably happy, but that's not the staff that's working at, the flea-ridden motel down the road. Never mind the ones who are doing slave treatment in like whatever camps that still exist in the world. Like,
Yeah.
Seems I would like to draw a comparison from what you're saying too to something that Glarastes says much later in this little chunk of Darrow and Lysander. He says, oh yeah, and like there were actual slaves, as
yeah,
if he didn't.
understand.
We're not talking about laborers and contractors. There were actually slaves. He himself, as an orange who had a lot of access to wealth and privilege through his trade, was just waking up to the fact that the extent of human rights abuses were far beyond his original ken while the society was active.
Yeah.
So, sure, maybe the people that Lysander saw actually were happy, but how much did they know about what was really going on?
Yeah.
How much did he really see of their intimate interactions to make that judgment call?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and that's why I think it's hard of like Lysander, it's almost like he genuinely, he thinks he's doing what's best for the society, and every once in a while he gets on the right path, but it's like he doesn't have the backstory, the like what has occurred and what continues to occur. I I highly doubt Lysander knows that the Red Hand exists. I would, why would it come up? I would doubt that he knows what some of the Obsidians have gone through. Why would it come up to him? And so he's just so stuck in his world that he genuinely thinks he's trying to make, well, if society comes back, then we have order, then it all goes back, but he doesn't have, he's the kid who never learned history class. He's the kid who, tuned out, doesn't turn on the news channels, and just thinks, yeah, sure, the world's fine because my world is fine. Well, his world is not technically fine right now. His world
He went
was
to history
fine.
class. He went to history class, and he got the history of, um, like, I mean, I don't know how it is in Canada, but like how we got it. As Atlas says when Darrow confronts him in the prison about the hands and everything,
Yeah.
the victor gets to write the perspective of history. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's just paraphrasing, but essentially, so, as a halfway middle class white passing person in school, I see history written in a way that is relatively kind to how people in that social sphere want it to seem.
Yep.
Right. So,
100%.
and some people question that. Most people don't. If it appeases them, great.
Yeah.
Hey, that says nice things about me. That's great.
Yeah.
And that feels like the critical thinking. I think surely when he was in line to be the next sovereign, there had to have been a more rigorous education for him that would include briefings and social critiques of various other classes and stuff like that. But he's been 10 years out of the game, and
Well,
he sees it firsthand in an extremely limited way based off of just being on a ship with Cassius and then immediately getting back into the fray with the society very
yeah.
quickly.
And that's it. He probably knows that the mines existed in the same way. Like, so to compare him to Mustang, who grew up in essentially the same environment he grew up, she must have known that the mines existed because she had to know in order to take over the governship, archgovern, whatever.
Yeah, arch governorship.
Like, she clearly was being raised, but was probably, it's this story you tell of like, and as you say, Canada was the same. The history we learned, it's now just being written into law that they have to change it. Of, um, yeah, what we did was for the best of everybody. No, no. It was much
Yeah, it was very
happier when the British
sanitized.
and the French took over. Trust me on this. And that's, so that's, I'm sure, what Mustang was also raised on of like, no, they're happy in the mines. It keeps them busy. But Mustang's that person who's got that critical thinking aspect that we see her in Golden Sun, that she's doing her thesis and everything on all these different behaviors of all the different colors. And so she's already started that own, like, that's before she knows that Darrow's a red. She has already started her own process of things seem off. This can't be it, which is then why she's, I think, more accepting. Just, we can go back to how Darrow's an idiot and you don't just drop a hollow cube on that, but she is more accepting to the fact of like, cool, this is the world that I want to help build. Lysander doesn't have that critical thinking. He just goes into it with, no, but the world's perfect. Yeah, the mines exist. I'm sure they're happy in the mines. But he's never gone into them, I'm sure. Or if he has, as you say, they're all terrified, so they're going to act a certain way.
How, like, the I read a book recently about the kind of grocery supply chain, and it got into great detail about how people in South East Asia are basically enslaved on shrimping boats.
Oh,
I
okay.
mean, we're talking they go out to the ocean and they're on those boats for years without ever touching land because the can resupply by boats and they're paying off debts. It's insane. And to me, it's the same kind of like, okay, now Badger knows that that exists.
Mm-hmm.
I know that it exists. It makes me feel horrible and it makes me want to do stuff about it, but still, how much do I know about
Right.
it? Never having known a person, never having experienced it myself, how much do you really know about that? And it's we have 8 billion people on our planet. They have how many billions of people across the entire solar system? There's gaps. People are going to have
Yeah.
gaps. Gaps are human. To reduce people down to their color, both metaphorically in the series as a literary device and in real life,
Yeah.
is not forgivable.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
So yeah, so I think to me this is one of the. I was already very much on the fuck Lysander train before we got to this. Somewhere around the early 40s, late 30s chapters, the first read through,
Mm.
I remember being like, you know what? Nope. I'm sensing doublespeak and I'm sensing it's giving like neo-Nazi realness here. No. But
Yeah.
but even on the second time through, I was very much looking to see if I had written him off too soon, and I do not think I did. And then this comes through, and this is one of the sentences that really grinds it into every single orifice like sand that's stuck in your car after going to the beach one time 3 years ago.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I think he has a mommy complex. What
Such
do
a
you
Oh,
guys
mommy
think?
100%.
Well, and we see that of like, okay, so you don't have memories of your mom. Gonna be an issue. But you were raised with your grandmother pretending basically to be your mom. So you do have that figure. But then like the way and like Atlantia is fucking weird and we'll talk about this later with some of the shit we discover. So he doesn't really attach himself to Atlantia, but Calendora, he's like, "Oh my god, like you are like my life now."
Well,
And
and
you're like,
Serafina, a little bit.
and Serafina, you're right. Serafina, he was like, "Okay, like female, let me attach." That it's like freaking weird. Yeah, at least that
Well,
Laniat is like so weird that he's like, I don't know what's happening here and I don't like it. But Calendora and as you say, Serafina, it's like he's just like, I will ride or die. And it's like, I wish you would. I wish you would die.
it was very confusing. It's very confusing to see these women through his eyes. I'm not sure what. First of all, unreliable narrator, again, to the nth degree. That's a beautiful parallel between him and Darrow. Darrow, I want to give the benefit of the doubt always. Lysander, eh, eh. But I'm not sure, he goes back and forth, hot and cold with Serafina 10, 20 times in a very short arc.
Yeah.
And with Calendora, where does it stand? Is it adoration in a matronly way? Is it romantic, sexual, not sexual,
Yeah.
soldierly? What is it? It's
Yeah.
so unclear. And this is the chunk where we get from Atlas the specific verbiage that they were both groomed. He and Ajax were groomed
Yeah.
by Atalantia. So between the not remembering his mother and uh, Octavia being who she was, losing Aja, and also being groomed by Atalantia. I mean, the poor man. I do feel bad for him on this.
That's
No, this
I
one
will
thing.
Oh,
say
yeah.
I think I'm not an apologist, but I have a lot of empathy for Lysander. That he's got a fucked up life. Like I'm sure if he was raised as he should have been, he would have actually probably been worse. But like he's had this difficult life, and he also feels to me, you know, that person who they're 16 to 18 but believe that they have the maturity of a 30-year-old, but really you're talking to them and you're like, you actually have the maturity of a 13-year-old. Like he's
Often people who
got,
have that mentality.
yeah, like they've got this, like, and that's him, that he just thinks he's so much older, and it's like, sit down, sit down. And that's, I think, both Octavia and poor drunk Uncle Cassius doing his best, but who thought that Cassius was responsible with a child? Um, like, it's more. Oh, who's now? That's bad. What's her name? Who's the blue?
I
Orion?
Yeah,
Pytha. Oh, okay.
Pytha. I remembered Orion. Pytha. Like, I feel like poor Pytha probably had to do some more of the like. And blues, we know, are not empathetic. They're like robots over here. Probably had to do a lot of the like, hey, why don't we teach you humanity? And like he just doesn't get it, which is a huge problem. He should talk to his therapist about this.
yeah.
There's no therapy in space. Yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah,
The so there's a point where I do think Atlas specifically calls him out like a sense of feigned nobility, and then they continue the conversation, and it goes on, and he is asking Lysander, "What is your why behind wanting to be back in the fray? Specifically, your plan. What is the larger picture behind your specific plan to infiltrate the camp, Darrow's camp?" And Atlas comes away with the sense that it's because Lysander is an idealist. I think that in
yeah.
light of what Pierce may be revealing somewhat to us in the podcast on Monday with Hail
Yes.
Reaper,
Shout
I
out to
thought
Hail
that was
Reaper.
interesting. Yeah, like a really interesting insight with, because my initial response is, Pierce, what are we defining as nobility here? I do
Yeah,
think
I
he
saw
has a
your
sense of
comment on that.
nobility.
Yeah.
I do think he does. But it's just like you can arrive at a bad conclusion if you start your argument from an illogical premise.
Yeah.
I think that's what's happening here. I think we have somebody in Lysander who really does have idealism, and a sense of nobility in the. I looked up the definition. I don't have it with me in front of me right now, but the willing to adhere to ideals is, I think, part of a core definition of nobility, and that is Lysander. It's just
They're
that,
just the wrong ones.
right, morally speaking, they're not the right. They're not what we want to see.
Right.
So is Lysander noble?
Who knows? I'll just do a quick shout out to
No.
Hail Reaper.
Bull.
Yeah. Because yeah, so if you're watching this, this will come out the Wednesday, 2 days prior to this coming out. The Monday prior to this, they have a whole episode with Pierce that they were in person with Pierce.
Lucky.
I know. Well, they all live in California. That's why we just need him to come to Canada and us to actually live close together. But probably not.
Or we just
For you to go to
We could go to California or Tulsa. But yeah, shout out to Hail Reaper. They actually sent me stickers this week, so good on them. Sorry, us. We get stickers. I'll put them in my purse
Ostensibly.
now. I'll put
Skipper
them in
has
my.
them,
I have
whether
them.
I end up with them or not.
I will put them in my purse. I will put them in my passport just for you. So that
Oh,
they. Okay? They're going to go in my passport. I will
perfect.
bring them to Tulsa with everybody's pins that I've been hoarding since December. Um, but yeah, so just quick shout out to them. And while we're giving shout outs, Howler Pod is back. So
Fuck yeah, they are.
and they gave us a great shout out and the den. So we actually got 7 new members today in the den. Um, and I am their favorite Hazard Bedlam. Even though they were like, I like the girl who jumped out of the plane. And I was like, yeah!
I
But
mean,
yes.
that's fair. Like, that's some fucking howler energy.
Yeah. I have a lot of howler energy, hence my drink. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, just wanted to give, as we had mentioned, so Pierce has talked about the noble heart, so we'll give out to our, I want to call them like our big siblings, like they're the big kids on the block for the Red Rising
Yeah,
podcast, like our older
absolutely.
sibling podcasts. But they are both lovely, and both of those groups have been super supportive of us. So, anyways, back on to, yeah, by this time, people might be watching this and being like, Pierce already defined it. And we'll be like, well, we didn't know. All we saw was a clip on Instagram. um,
It's
Yeah.
true. And now I'm on record. So great. I am legally on record. This is awesome. No italics here. Just raw dogging it with my definition of nobility and
yeah,
hoping for the best.
that's what
Here
we're
we go.
here for. We love it. We love it. But yeah,
Now I might be wrong on video.
do I need to
It'll
edit
be
this
on the internet for
Tuesday and
everyone there to
remove
see.
it? I'll
No,
edit.
it's good for my ego.
Yeah. I
Maybe
mean,
not good for my anxiety, but good for my ego. So
I mean, no, you're fine, I think. But yeah, it is an interesting concept of Lysander just in a whole is an interesting concept because I think he
let's
always
put
thinks
him in a hole.
let's.
Close the cover.
One
Let's
filled
send
with
him from
cat
cradle to
guano and
grave.
wither tails.
Um,
Yeah.
uh, but yeah, he's just an interesting character that I genuinely think he thinks at all times he's doing what is right, not just for the golds, but for the entire solar system. And he's just got such limited knowledge, not just from his privilege, but from missing 10 years, basically, scrubbed of any real human contact.
Real cute human contact. Very.
Yeah.
Um, so what do we think about or let me ask you, how do you feel about the scene where he is, we're about to get into the action, right? So he attacks, well, actually, he is attacked by Atlas first, and then it's just game on. It's this whole conversation. It's chill. You know, they're sharing a little bat meat jerky
Yeah.
here and discussing ornaments there. And oh, by the way, I knew you had a plan. Why don't you go ahead and tell me? Okay, that seems all right because I don't really want to kill everybody anyway. So, okay, we got a plan. And punch and go. And all of a sudden, it feels like we're seeing Darrow in terms
Mm.
of the pacing, where it's
Yes.
almost like we're
Yeah.
watching Darrow go
Yeah.
through this. Thoughts, feelings, insights, concerns.
Um, I think it speaks a lot to Lysander's character versus Darrow's, that he's like when he is escaping, he is purposely making rookie errors. Like he is consciously making himself seem less capable to keep up his cover
Right.
versus Darrow just being like, yeah, I'm a huge badass. What of it?
I got
If
these
Darrow had
hands.
been there, I don't think that would have worked. I
No.
think Darrow would have been like, "Nope, that's Aja's this, and that's Cassius's that. This is not a
Oh, for
noob."
sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
Darrow's been a martial man for 15 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Like
love,
that is
though,
his vocation.
for sure. I do love this escape scene, I will say, though. And
It's
like,
amazing.
but you also like it's fast paced. I love this portion. Like any parts of these books that I get that like adrenaline, like the bike part's sweet. But I do, it is, as you say, tied in though, like not just with his rookie mistakes, but we still get how Lysander thinks of like he's getting frustrated that Alexander keeps having to look back at the map. Because Lysander would have
Yep.
memorized it at this point. And Alexander,
Has
like any
memorized it at this point.
yeah, and
Yeah.
Alexander, like any human, is like, hold on. Probably doing the like, if I stand here, I have to rotate it this way. That's what I have to do. It's like, where's north? Rotate it so that you're like whatever position with north. Um, like he's getting frustrated with that, and so you're seeing those Lysander parts come out rather than
Mm-hmm.
if this was Darrow, like he might make a comment about it, but he wouldn't. It wouldn't frustrate him. He would just be like, "Okay, can we just right? Like, let the guy do his thing. We'll let him have his self confidence or whatever, rather than Lysander's like, dear God, like, just freaking. Like, it's really interesting of those little bits where he's like, I know
Yeah.
better, and has to then, when they get down to the tunnel and there's
Yeah,
two,
they
but
go
there's
into the
actually
cold portion.
seven. Like, he has to try and just weirdly play it off of like a fluke that he realized. But he, the whole time, is like, well, obviously, kind of a thing. And it's like,
Yeah.
control yourself. You're not.
Yeah, it's
You're not.
like when they go into like out of the Wither Tail and Bat Cavern into the next section of tunnel that's like cold. Like, oh yeah, we'll ambush them here, and Lysander's like, yeah, they've got, infrared scope. Like,
Yeah.
if you were gonna make a stand, do it in the last cave where you might have a chance of sneaking up on them. And then he says, it's amazing how quickly razors reduce genius IQ to grunt logic.
Mm-hmm.
Criminal Hellraisers reduce genius
Yeah.
IQs. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
How fast? Absolutely. Yeah. He's judging. He's so judgy.
So
Yep.
judgy. Um, I
I'm a
mean,
judgy person, and he is judgy.
super judgy. And I think especially, I wonder how much of that is because Alexander is his cousin, and it is that like I don't know. What is he? Was he jealous of Alexander? Like, how much did they actually hang out? Was he jealous of Alexander getting to be raised by Lorne, who might clearly has a much more stable, well-built family? And then question, what's her name? Drusilla? Is that
Drusilla.
Drusilla, yeah.
Drusilla? It says it's Alexander's cousin. Is that his like opposite side of the family and therefore not Lysander's cousin, or did I miss it and it's also Lysander's cousin?
It's not specifically
It's not
stated.
said, but Lysander
He's
doesn't
just an
comment,
Arcosian knight.
so Alexander or Lysander never comments, and I feel like he would have said like, oh, and also my
Yeah.
other cousin, so
Yeah,
must be the other side of the family.
I don't think that Alexander had siblings,
Okay.
which would mean that not related to Lysander, because
He,
Lysander is
I need a
related
map.
to Alexander through Alexander's mother. Or sorry, Alexander's. Wait, what? No.
Because there's
Oh
more
god.
than there's
Now
like
I've confused
four. There's
myself.
like, isn't there four
yes,
boys?
mother.
There's four Arcos
Yeah.
boys, isn't there?
Yeah.
So
So Lysander's. Oh god. Yeah, Lysander's father
is an
was
Arcos.
Alexander's uncle.
Correct.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
that still leaves out two other uncles that they would have shared. And could they not have had kids that
Yeah.
Drusilla is one of them?
Yes. Yeah.
All we know is that they're all of that crew is they're Arcosian knights.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that Drusilla is a cousin.
But we
Yeah.
don't
I guess.
know.
Yeah.
Like,
So of course. Yeah. I guess every Arcosian child from that generation would be related to Lysander.
yeah. He doesn't give a shit about Drusilla.
Well, he's already written all of them off.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
Fuck yeah.
I mean, as far as even having disdain for the Golds goes, the second he walks in from being tortured and sits down, he's looking and he's saying, he's going in to interacting with them all as if they don't have their ability to make up their own mind. They're puppets of Darrow. That Darrow's their master. This is something throughout this scene where they're escaping on the bikes and moving toward Darrow. That just, even though this is the least ick of all the chapters for me, as far as Lysander POVs go, because we get to see so much of Alexander kicking ass and so much action, it still irked me because every time he refers to the relationship between Darrow and Alexander, it's Alexander's master, Alexander's master.
Yeah.
Which is a really fucked up projection from somebody who actually would be a slaver themselves.
Yeah.
To then project. What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's interesting how he thinks that they're, enslaved to Darrow or whatever, but like they're obviously fighting really, really hard to get back. Doesn't seem like something that somebody that was, forced to be there would do.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I read it as more he thought they were like brainwashed of like
right.
That's ironic.
Yeah. Oh,
that's the fucking
right?
pot calling the kettle black.
Yeah, but yeah, they're definitely this like, I don't know. It's really interesting how he views them in that manner because I think he doesn't understand like why would the Golds follow him? Like why? You're killing your own people. Like it's like over and over. He's like, why are you causing a civil war? And it's like, aren't we all causing civil war right now?
Because your Golds are trash, Lysander.
Yeah. Yeah, we kind of 100% skipped over everything at Atlantia. Talk about relationship. Like, we almost had too much information to call this podcast a Fade to Obsidian with the Atlantia Ajax revelation. Like, he gets to do all these, like, basically war crimes and be rewarded via sex. Like, and she's in her 50s and he took her when... I think it says like not yet 16. Like, let's.
Yeah, I don't know if she's in her 50s, but she's definitely
older.
Oh, she's definitely at least in her 40s.
Yeah.
And he, since the age of like 16, I think Atlas says, has been doing this thing where it's like, yeah, go kill these people and then I'll reward you with sex. And it's like, oh God.
Yeah, that's super gross. Like the familial tie aside.
Also, that's what I was about to say. Their aunt and nephew. They are like that DNA there would not produce a human or like a healthy child. Yeah. But
I think that we don't get enough of Ajax for me to make too much judgment call on him, but I really do think that having the insight as to how Atalantia showed up in both of their lives, and that it was common knowledge amongst the adults in that circle, and no one intervened.
Yeah.
Really does.
Well, that and I think it then speaks really to Lysander when he's like, "Oh, that's why he was jealous when she kissed me," and it's like, there is a bigger issue than just, "Oh, I stole his girl." Like, no.
Dog, there is like 5 more layers there. You gotta fucking peel that onion.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
But yeah, and then we get
I was gonna say, let's move on.
possibly the coolest set of lines in the book,
Okay.
with Long Malice deployed, uh, Midnight inbound, but from Lysander's perspective, and it's
Yeah.
a voice like no other.
A voice like
Like,
no other. Honestly, this and then there's another point too where Darrow comes in and he Darrows in front of Lysander, and seeing him do that is so. This is the I guess the third time because the other one before was the light contact with
Light
the
light
enemy,
resistance.
resistance, yeah.
right? Light resistance, and yeah. So now here we have a third time, and the discrepancy is enormous, and it's so. This is what I'm getting, and it's very interesting. That light resistance one was a little bit apart, but listening to two different narrators speak Darrow aloud
Yeah.
is interesting to me, and it kind of gives some nuance to the parts in the book that I don't take away from just reading it. I feel, and maybe it's just how Lysander's narrator vocalizes the Irish accent specifically for Darrow, but I feel very much that through Lysander's gaze, I see Darrow as a red so much more than I
Yep,
see
100%.
it from his own perspective. Yeah,
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Lysander's like, this is just a giant red.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like he's, oh my god.
Yeah. Well, it's because that's what he, as we say, he just takes everybody down to their color. And therefore,
Yeah,
Darrow is no longer the gold he idolized. It's funny because he's no longer the gold he idolized. He acknowledges he's a red and he should not be looking up to him. But he still has that, like, when Darrow arrives at the scene, that, like, in the same vibe you get, like, when you're in the presence of a celebrity and, like, oh my
yeah.
God, like, even if it's a celebrity you don't like, it's like, oh
Me
God,
during the
they're
gala.
there. Yeah. Yeah. Wait, are you saying you don't like Pierce?
Dude, he's titillated.
No, that
He doesn't
that that
want
was
to be.
me. That
Oh
was
yeah.
me fangirling.
Um, no, I because I said even if it's a celebrity you don't like, and then you were like me during the
Oh
gala.
no no no
That was
no! I was in the process of saying that while you were saying it.
um, but
Lag, bro.
yeah. But yeah, they get really interesting whenever those happen. And now, so to throw this out, because this is something we learned this week, is that Lightbringer will be narrated by only Tim Gerard Reynolds.
Yeah, he mentioned that in an interview a
Yeah.
few. Uh,
So it'll be interesting because especially me when I'm driving, I sometimes like I don't know some of these episodes or chapters are 45 minutes long, and I'm like, wait, who am I on again? When it's these Lysander Darrow, and it's the voice that'll bring me back of like, oh yeah, we're still listening to Lysander. So it'll be
yeah,
interesting when it's. I mean, we love TGR, but be
yeah.
interesting for that portion
Um,
of how does that affect, but. Yeah, like I really like this part that we get. Well, we get Lysander's experience with Darrow, but we also get Lysander looking at how Alexander puts his full faith that Darrow will show up. That through
Yeah,
that, it's how many calls of pup one to howler one, pup one to howler one, pup one to
dude, that
howler one.
was
Like,
so
yeah.
anxious.
Oh
Four
yeah,
times of
absolutely.
listening, still so anxious.
yeah,
It's
Still
like, oh
so
my god, is
anxious.
he gonna come?
Yeah.
yeah. But Alexander just in that moment, and you get to see it through Lysander's point of view of like Alexander knows that if he just needs to make it and Darrow will show up, and you get
Trust Paul.
Lysander looking at that,
Yeah,
and that's then where we get the spin on the point of view of Darrow being like, oh shit, like we're going in and we're yeah.
yeah. Like he, that's definitely a huge difference between between Darrow and Lysander is like Lysander's like he would not do this. Darrow would do anything for any member of his army.
Yeah.
And Lysander is just like, I mean, I guess he does stand up for some of the Greys, but that's pretty.
But I think it's that trust of nobody has stolen the code. Like, I'm sorry, they're using the world's weakest code. Can you not easily figure out who Pup 1 and Howler 1? Like,
Yeah,
we're
no
still
kidding.
using
Like,
Howler 1 as your call sign? Like,
though
seriously, dude?
he does actually call out like a check code.
Um. Okay,
But at
fair.
that point, this goes to the point though of how much trust there is. He is so certain that Darrow will catch him when he falls that he's willing to put it on blast, basically planet wide. Anybody who can hear
For sure.
the call, because that's something that Lysander notes. He said, "Oh, I thought this was going to be a covert operation. Here he is. He just put it on blast for everybody.
Yeah.
Whoops."
Yeah,
So
he just put it on the big stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's that part, but the other part of trust is later we see once they're safe and they're back is Darrow is like, who the fuck is this Cato person? Like, Darrow's gut instinct is, I don't like Cato. I don't like Cato. And Alexander actually goes, you know what? No, like, this is the thing. And Darrow goes, fine. I trust Alexander. I trust, like, I
Yeah.
mean, within reason, he does spike him and do whatever and send him on his way. But Darrow, I think, if he had his way, would kept him in prison. And it's like,
Or
Oh,
just
like,
killed
he
him.
actually says
Yeah.
it. He actually says it.
yeah.
Like,
But
he
it's
straight up
Alexander's
talks
like,
about how he
no,
would.
trust me on this one. And Darrow's like, fine, I trust you. Like, but yeah, I
At
love.
least Darrow's not stupid enough to just like completely take Alexander
Yeah,
at his
he's
word.
like,
It's
I'm
it's
still
trust
gonna
but
spike him.
verify.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do all the, like, we get to see how they do all the lie detector stuff and, like,
Yeah. I love Darrow coming in and being like,
sending the robot to the corner.
what? Yeah, yeah, stay.
Does it have to be in his face? Well, it's
Some-
on
something about-
intimidation
damn
mode.
toaster.
Bloody damn toaster. That's the other POV through Lysander's eyes that we get. That to me is just like he comes in as, yeah, he just comes off as a red in that scene. Like he comes off as Darrow, and also a warlord, sure, but also very human, very very human, and very very red.
I
In
was
a
gonna
good
say,
way.
it's very red. It's funny I have to remind myself so often in these books that it is at least 700, we're guessing 1,000 years in the future. That, like, in my mind, when they're like lie detector test, it's like what we have. And I think that's because we start these books in the mines where we don't have the elaborate technology. And we know throughout this that, like, Darrow at certain points just doesn't trust the technology. That he's like, fucking toaster, get it away from me. And so in my head, like, it's really funny of, you know, we talk about the war rooms and whatever. And in my head, they're like, well, like the castles in the Institute. In my head are medieval castles. It does not even dawn on me that they would have.
Pretty much straight up.
Are they?
Like,
but then I like
aside
Mars
from like
definitely is.
aside from like their maps and stuff that like
Yeah.
update automatically and all that stuff. I have always viewed all of the castles as very medieval style.
But then I even
because they're supposed to basically have nothing.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, they describe them as ramparts. There's certain things. There's certain
Yeah.
descriptions of the castles in the Institute that would trigger the connection to a more medieval architecture.
But then even in the Citadel, when we get like Mustang trying to protect herself, and there's like a thing in the wall. There's no way that that's not like 24th century technology.
Oh,
and
yeah,
meanwhile,
100%.
I'm over here being like, yeah, like castles can have like sliding doors, like I don't know, and so it's things like this, and I think it's because we see every once in a while that Darrow doesn't trust technology. Like I won't even lie, the Fade to Obsidian's logo is supposed to be a war room, so it's like, but it's too. I was so resistant to it, and everyone else was like, "No, it's a clear war room," and I was like, "No, that looks like the 22nd century," and it's like, "Yeah, because this takes place in the 22nd century." Like, I'm like, "No, it should have like
32nd even.
wooden." Yeah. Oh, you're right. Math is hard. Yeah, 32nd. Um, yeah, that I'm like so stuck in our day and age that stuff that goes through on this that I'm like, so then yeah, so this whole lie detector thing. I'm still thinking like lithogram, and even that I'm like, ooh, that's advanced that they would have a lithogram. And then I'm like, no, they've got fucking like shit that goes into their brains. I don't know why in my head I have to be like, okay, we're in the
Yeah.
Pretty hilarious
future.
though that they're like, why is Darrow says, why is it up in his face like that? And they're like, it's
Yeah,
on
can it?
intimidation mode.
Yeah,
You know,
that's some high quality shit.
Yeah.
yeah.
Like, can it work in the corner?
And then Rona says something. So what did she say? She says something and it goes lie.
No, it's about
Oh yeah,
Alexander of like, no, like I don't need to be near him. I don't care or whatever. And it's like
Yeah,
lie.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah, yeah,
basically
yeah,
him like calling her out
yeah.
of like you're in love with him.
yeah. Which is very important. I think we need to pause because this all that happened. The interrogation happens
Yes.
after
After we
we
get that Rona
actually
is like,
receive. Yeah, we get to receive Alex back, and he's like, "Here's your wolf cloak."
yeah, I told
You
you I'd
know,
bring it back.
I told you I'd bring it back,
yeah.
which I think is a
So,
reference, but I'm not sure exactly to what.
oh, like an Easter egg reference.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Ooh.
I do feel as though that is a familiar beat of action, and I now will have to be looking out for that. Or we could just ask in the Reaper's room.
I don't
That's
know.
okay. It may not be. It just
It might
feels like
not. It
one.
just, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I don't particularly like the narrator for Lysander. I mean, like he does do a good job of sounding like ridiculously pompous.
Mm.
Um, but I will say that I love the way he voices Darrow
Oh,
because like I feel like Lysander absolutely would be the one to be like, oh, there's like this ever so, and honestly, like Darrow's probably slipped back to more of like a red dialect
well, he's
since
hanging out with
he
the Reds more.
became,
Yeah.
well, yeah, that, and like is now an open red. Um, and
Yeah, that's true.
so he's probably not speaking the same as he was in Golden Sun.
Hmm.
Um,
Interesting.
so it makes sense to me that Lysander would be like, this is very noticeable.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to compare because we get also a little. We like I said previously, I made the reference to the hands, the Atlas hands getting maybe chopped off and then not by Darrow when he's in
Gross.
custody, right? And every single, I, it's utterly consistent when Lysander is describing Atlas. Whenever we get a description of Atlas from anybody else, when we get Darrow's description of Atlas, this guy sounds to me like Hannibal Lecter.
Ooh.
Oh yeah.
In terms of there's the philosophical component, there's the refined component, there's the restraint, the personal restraint, there is the sense of remove, pure sociopathy, and just a set, and that like there's a certain level of theatrics publicly that does not translate to the private life. It's giving Hannibal Lecter so much.
Yep.
Yeah,
It,
I totally see that.
Atlas
Yep.
is my favorite bad guy of
Yeah.
these two books so
Yep,
far. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, I really like. I think it's showing. the mind's eye on display a little more, where Darrow is standing in front of the one-way glass at Atlas's cell, and Atlas is tracking him. He's like, he can't see me, but he's like, his eyes are following me. That's eerie as fuck.
I don't think I picked up that would have been mind's eye. I don't know why I wouldn't pick that up, but yeah, I like that.
He's been out in the Kuiper Belt. He said, what Lysander challenges him about what has he learned in the Kuiper Belt, and he learned how to outsource. Like Atlas has a lot of angles.
This is the thing with the, like as you say, like Atlas has got, so he's Rim, but then sent to the core. So he's got those two worlds that probably more than anybody else has.
Right.
Other than Dido would have the opposite of core to Rim, but he's got the Rim
went because of love.
Yes.
He went as a hostage.
Yeah. And then to the Kuiper Belt, which we don't even really ever hear what happens out there. But yeah, like he's fascinating that he's got that total world perception. And especially because we get so much Romulus and Iron Gold, that like the difference between the brothers is huge, I would say.
Oh yeah.
Which they even talk about, of like, oh, so what happened to my brother? He took the long walk to the dragon's tomb. How long did he talk first? Like, he calls him on it, of like,
he knew
too long.
He talked. Yeah, too long. Yeah,
that was a good moment.
Just to go back, because all we just did was go, oh, we should talk about Rona and Alex, and then tried to bring up that cloak. Let's go back to Rona and Alex for a second, because we got too sidetracked of, is that a reference? Like, I think we've gotten hints this whole time, and then Darrow having to comfort Rona, we're pretty sure Alex is dead, and then we get in this part the, like, confirmation from the machine, but also she is the one who is fully camped out, fully, like, we just love them. I just love them.
Yeah, like,
I don't know. I won't speak for you.
Still injured from a digger bullet in her helmet, like waiting at the tunnel to Taiki.
Right.
And then,
oh my gosh, yeah.
And then
she like comes running in, like, what did they do to him?
Mm-hmm. Oh, which, by the way, we had a discussion at some point about the resilience of people under torture and whatnot. There was questions as to how far had torture gone with Alexander versus Orion. And this is where we get it completely revealed. I mean, it was the full thing. He had everything.
The full meal deal.
Yeah.
His teeth are gone. His fingers are gone.
He's been eaten on by rats. It's the whole thing.
His ears are gone.
Oh, yeah, his ears. Yeah. There's an ongoing theme with ears in this book that I noticed. Like, Pierce loves taking hands, which we talked during the gala of, that's the easiest thing to be a sword fight you take. But in this book, we get a lot of ears, because later Victor is going to lose an ear. Like, but yeah. Like,
yeah. It's just a fleshy appendages. It only takes 5 pounds of pressure to rip an ear off. Super easy.
Yep. It's true.
Also, fingers.
I don't wear any earrings. I don't wear any earrings, and now I never will.
Also,
at least it's 5 pounds from the top.
Okay, I'm gonna cover. Normally, I don't have both ears covered. I'm gonna start covering both ears, because now I
just in case.
Can you hear yourself talk? Is it gonna throw you off?
Oh, I'm gonna be so loud now. I can't do that. It's okay. There's nobody.
Actually, that's a really good idea. I should probably put one of mine in the thing so that it's charging, because at this rate, we're definitely going full.
Don't pull the Pierce during the Bacchanal. They died. Don't pull the Pierce during the Bacchanal. If you're watching and you did not see the...
Hang on. We might have lost Badger.
No.
Nope, I'm here.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
If you did not see the Holiday Bacchanal, Pierce was wearing AirPods, and they died halfway through, and then it was a whole thing. Charge one, have another one going, and there was a whole thing. And it became an ongoing joke that I have noticed that now at all times he's got, like when he was doing the glittering gala, he was fully plugged in. He's like, I don't.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so anyway, so poor Alex has been put through the ringer, and Rona's just not sleeping, just hanging out. I think I'm gonna. Badger, I don't think we can hear you. Try.
I don't think. Oh no.
Nope, we're not hearing you. I know what I was gonna say. Is it almost mirrors, but not quite. Though we don't know, in theory. Morning Star, it almost mirrors Darrow coming back, injured, in bed, and Mustang refuses to leave the room. Which in Golden Sun, you're right, Golden Sun. Which then in Golden Sun, we get a Fade to Obsidian moment. For all we know, there was a Fade to Obsidian moment, but Darrow's not there, and Darrow's probably, not only is he oblivious to these things, but I also think
he doesn't want to know.
He does not. That is his niece with his basically son. He does not want to know.
Yep.
But yeah, we do get quite the. I love Pup 1 and Pup 2. I love them. But
yep.
Yeah. We get a really lovely another what's the word I want to use? Lysander being a just horrible person where he's judging Rona. He's like, oh, this child. Because we're using child red.
Now.
Yeah.
Because she's, what, 18 we know at this point? So it's like...
I think she's 20 even.
Yeah. Oh, so she's same age as...
His age, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my... Can you hear my cats?
I can hear your cat.
Yeah, now we can. It's okay.
It's all good. I'm surprised one of mine hasn't jumped up here yet. Yeah, he's super judgmental of... Yeah, they're using children soldiers is what he's saying. And it's Rona, who is very much an adult and can hold her own. And we are...
Yeah, she was first in her class at Hog's Tooth.
Yeah. And I mean, Darrow doesn't even technically want her there, but more for the family reasons, not because she's young. Yeah.
Just the erasure of her and all of her skills and all of the complexity that she carries with her, etc., etc.
But she's reduced to her color and being a child.
Yeah.
Child.
Yep. Which, I mean, for the Reds...
redemption arc from that.
And again, remember, for the Reds, a 20-year-old is actually like a 50-year-old. Right?
Yeah, like well-seasoned.
Well-seasoned for a Red. Yeah. I mean, we assume that a Red in this day and age especially, well, not under Darrow's care because they go, but if you're, like, we expect that Deanna will live a lot longer than the 35 that she's expected, but...
well, yeah, she's already at, like, 50.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But still, like...
33.
Yeah. But,
we get...
But yeah, like, she's actually getting medical care.
Yeah, exactly.
Who, Deanna?
Deanna.
Yeah.
Rona.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. We get a body count. 250 million people have died in this war so far.
Yep.
Yeah.
And counting, of course.
Yeah.
Because,
actually, we get that a little earlier in the discussion on what's her ship called?
Atalantia ship?
Yep.
Oh.
I can't remember what Skipper, you're the ship one.
It's the one it says something, it's something about like destroying stuff is the name of it. Yeah, there we go.
Because Lysander says 200 million dead, and then Atalantia says back to him 250, we hid a famine on Venus.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Imagine just hiding 50 million dead in a famine. Yeah, but we also get that, I think in this particular battle, is 20 million, correct?
Right.
Because they keep talking about during this section that Darrow is feeling the weight of the 20 million. Darrow is feeling the weight of the 20 million.
That's at stakes of who could yet die, because there's already been several million who have died, and this is like they're talking about the I think they're basically just talking about between the encamped soldier Darrow's encamped soldiers at Heliopolis, 10 million, right?
Yeah.
The legions, and then the civilians of Heliopolis. That's not even counting, I don't think, any of Atalantia's troops.
Right.
There's a lot of, I go back and forth on these numbers a lot because sometimes it's not specifically stated whether it's just the one side soldiers or both side soldiers, civilians or no civilians. So getting at this point, the takeaway is the scope is so beyond anything that we have experienced in the history of humanity that really, truly understanding it is probably mind-boggling, and you just got to chalk it up to we can't truly fathom it.
Correct. I mean, I think in modern history, the biggest would be World War II with 6 million. Now, the Crusades, being hundreds of years, would, in theory, probably outravel that. But for modern history, it would be World War II with 6 million. Yeah, that 20 million that they don't, trying to accumulate with that.
And 250 million total, like, have we lost 250 million total people to war?
Oh yeah.
Over maybe
total?
over all of human history? Probably yes. But
but
not,
that's 2,000 year. Well, more than 2,000.
Yeah, like
BC. If we're getting into BC, it's going to be a whole other capacity. But you're right that that is tens of thousands of years, not them doing it in 10.
Yeah.
Also, wasn't the actual like total death toll of World War II somewhere around 30 million? It was just 6 million Jews.
Oh, you're right. 6 million is the Holocaust. You're correct.
Yeah, if we're talking about the Holocaust as well.
You're right.
Not
so
just soldiers,
you're right.
Yes.
Soldiers was included, and civilians would have been 30 million.
Total death count.
Yeah.
Because that 250 million is not like soldiers.
Right.
Yeah.
It's everyone. But so 30 million for World War II.
But
World War I is probably 10 million. That's 40 million over 30 years.
Yeah.
Not 250 million over
10. Yeah,
10.
like I mean it's a universal conflict. Like there's no real comparison we can draw, but
no, for sure.
We can try.
The New York Times estimates for the total number killed in wars throughout all of human history range from 150 million to 1 billion. That's a really big range.
That's a really big range. That's using the term estimate.
But that's because
very appropriately.
I mean, okay, let's put my history hat on. Like, first off, again, I bring up the Crusades is the longest running war of all time. And people forget that the Crusades are still fought today in theory.
Oh, God.
That's
here's
Israel.
Here's something that we're not even factoring in. The Spanish conquest of the Americas. I mean, come on, that's like 24 million people. Boom. Yeah.
And I mean, then you look back throughout all of history. So sure, then you have what are the Roman empires? And we have all these wars that we don't know. Like Troy, we assume happened in modern day. There's like things where we don't know if it was a 10-year war. We don't know what Troy actually was. Like there's so much that we have no idea whether or not the war actually even existed or if it's just a story or what. So I get that they have to put such a big thing on it, but that would be I think we're humans at this point are supposed to be around 30,000 years old. So we're talking 30,000
This is an important exercise. I know that probably on a surface level that this feels kind of like a rabbit trail that we're on right now. But I think
the
that this is a very valuable exercise for us to put into context, like how the human species shows up for itself historically, and then contrast that to right now, and really to ask ourselves, like, do we want to keep showing up like this moving forward? How can we do better?
yeah. I mean,
Stop killing each other. It's a pretty good goal.
Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, it's hard because there is obviously still war. We are seeing it not just Ukraine and Russia, but throughout the Middle East and everywhere else. But it's, I think, lowered at the point right now just because the major powers don't want to go to war because we now have nuclear weapons. And that's what we're seeing in Red Rising is these places with nuclear weapons are going at each other. Right? Like,
Yeah.
we in current base still have war. There is still huge atrocities happening, but for the most part, a lot of those, we saw the Cold War, that in theory we all could have died because Russia and the US holding the nuclear weapons didn't. What we're now seeing in Red Rising is they have no qualms about using those nuclear weapons or the storm gods or anything else in their capacity, rather than like nuclear weapons, I think, changed our modern history a lot more. And even when you look at World War One with trench warfare versus World War Two of, hey, we can actually drop bombs, that's a huge
Right.
difference.
Yeah.
And
Right. Which
then
Atlas
and
points
then
out.
yeah.
He
So
says
then
he brings it that because, we're just entering the beginning of sort of that kind of war at a remove. And he says, what is he? Distance has sanitized war, right? So
yeah.
part of what he does is to pull that veil
Yeah.
off and make people look at it that with his forests of impaled bodies. Um, so, but yeah, it only stands to reason as technology continues to advance and our ability to enact violence on one another at a distance, that the means to create massive destruction and loss of human life through uh, the push of a button, absolutely sanitary push of a button, only increases as well.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
it's
250
interesting
million.
though. It's interesting though to bring up how, like, so Atlas is using though impaling, which is, when is Vlad the Impaler? 1600s? 1700s? Um,
Oh, you're the
gases.
history buff.
I know. I used to be weirdly obsessed with Vlad the Impaler. It's bizarre. Let's not go down that path. But yeah, 16 or 1700s. And then uh, um, Atlas is
15th.
also talking about 1500s. There you go. He's also talking gas, like, and poison use and all of that. And the omnicide is what he brings up, which in modern day history was very World War One. We had the mustard gas, we had all of that, and that was ruled out before World War Two. Of like, we can't do this again. We can't go through. And now we're seeing it that 1,000 years in the future, we're using. I mean, it's modernized poison, but we're back to using those original things of like, hey, we don't actually need to drop nuclear weapons or the storm gods or anything. We can go back to what they were using in 1915 with the mustard gas. Like, it's very interesting how Pierce brings it all back around. Because
Yeah.
I'm sure also, I don't, like, my history only really starts. I know a little bit of history from 32 AD onwards, but I'm sure at some point previous, there's no way they didn't figure out how to make these concoctions, and then humans went, nope, stop using the gases, that's a bad one, and then they get out of style and you go back into it, and now we see that gassing people and poisoning is back, which we have not in modern history, we know is, outruled since World War One. So it's just very interesting on how that weapon. This is what I want. I want an hour to talk war with Pierce. I don't care that nobody else, like he said during the Glitter and Gala, of like nobody wants to hear how many like oxen it takes to feed an army, and I'm like, I do. I want to know. I want to know how these people are. Like, Pierce, can we just talk war strategy?
Yeah. I think he's underestimated his fandom a little bit by making that statement because I read
It's
a lot of
me.
those books myself and I would absolutely love to cross-reference.
100%.
So,
Art of War.
yeah.
I feel like I need to reread Art of War after this because I am sure he's brought it up. Like, it just reeks of Art of War. But yeah. Anyway, moving on. So after all of this, so we get the Alex Therona. Lysander is being released to God, how do I pronounce it? Thank you. And it's very interesting that we get to know that during his raising, he already was assigned this fake name, and it just is very helpful that the person who knew it is currently working in Darrow's army, and he is given as like, oh yes, that's just my apprentice. It's fine, and he gets to go hang out with Cleastes.
Yeah, I imagine it because that happens behind the scenes. We actually don't get that moment, but it's like you can imagine. I think the second he hears Cato Vitruvius
Yeah.
or Ed, is it Ed? He corrects Darrow. I can't remember what he does. He corrects Darrow. It's either I think it's Vitruvius, not Vitruvian.
Darrow says Vitruvian.
Right. You can imagine Cleastes being like, "Oh shit, it's our boy. He's back."
Yeah.
Right. But we don't actually get to see it. But it's that good of a deep cover that the second he hears that name, he knows to enact a certain protocol.
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting. It's very interesting.
Yeah, and I like that relationship because, as we were saying way at the beginning of this, of, you know, we assume that the Golds only like the Golds, but we get in that he like is an orange that is fully, I mean, I would say he is the Quicksilver of the oranges. Like, he is that silver who's made himself a gold. He is an orange who is the Tang. Is that what you just
Quicksilver is the silvers. What Tang is the oranges.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. He's no dull orange. He's no burnt orange. He's a full on neon screaming tangerine.
He is the high vis.
Oh, yeah.
The blaze orange.
The blaze orange of oranges.
Yeah. But yes, we get to see that world of like, this is an orange that has made himself out basically to be a gold because he's just the master maker. And look at all these amazing things he's done. Like all these, what is it? The statue? What is
the
it?
Water Colossus.
Yes, the Water Colossus. That like Lysander then gets to like pretend that all these people, he tells some story of like, they clung to that because of you. And like Lysander manipulating and all of this. But it's really interesting because if those are the people that Lysander is surrounding himself with, you understand why he's then like, I don't understand why you think you need a rising. They're all happy. Yeah, the guy with the stupid giant ass wine cellar, I think he's fine. Like, he's not the common man.
He's probably drunk off his ass.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Constantly. And high off of
soul dust.
Soul dust.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is like demon dust, but white, I guess.
And goes in your eyelid?
Like,
I hate that.
Any membrane.
He snorts it, and then he rubs it in his eyelid.
Yeah, he's just trying to. He's just trying to just get it all up in there as best as possible. So
yeah.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
I may have an answer.
Back on the whole, back to that moment where Darrow is interrogating Lysander, because it's been kind of eating in the back of my brain a little bit about how he really pushes for a reward. This is like right before we get him with Glaras. He's pushing for a reward, and then he says pinks, and then he's like, "Oh, you can't tell me that you don't have an indulgence every now and again, or you don't have an appetite for something like that now and again." And Darrow like steps to him.
Well, he's like, say it again. Say it again.
Yeah, exactly. And Lysander coaches himself in the beginning of that segment. I'm not going to dig for anything, but that to me felt like he was digging for something. What was your take on that? Because we don't get really clarity.
I think that is specifically Lysander playing up his I'm a libertine. Like,
okay,
that's how I took it. Of like,
course,
not like
you have to, like, of course you must use pinks. You can't abstain fully. Like, I love pinks. Like,
right. Okay, so you think that was his only play with that? You don't feel like he was like, what if I did happen to mine a little piece of data here?
Maybe it was. Maybe like it could be a good play because we know at this point, like, okay, so much as he's raised by Cassius, who claims that he's with the Rising, whatever, but we know that Cassius, when they're in Iron Gold, does not turn away the pinks. So it is possible that Lysander's like, you've got to become conditioned. And I don't think anyone would have, well, I don't know if Darrow was going around being like, even when I was pretending to be a gold, I never used pinks. Like, I can't see him doing that. So he could have mined, but I always
But he knows.
Just Cato trying to push himself. Like, it's Cato's moment.
I'm wondering if he, like, knows. I'm wondering, because to me, it's like that's a moment where that's not something that Darrow comes back to as this was particularly suspect, but it did to me feel like Lysander was almost going against his determination not to mine, and what Darrow's known, I think, for being very monogamous.
Yeah.
And he's been like personnel profile, like there's, I'm sure, data on him in the past foregoing the use of pinks.
He had one wife, and then he had another wife.
Right. Really, the only pinks he ever came into contact with, he liberated. So his track record is pretty fucking good there. And it felt either like A, he was trying to get a rise, or B, were that to have changed, that could have been something that he had in his back pocket as a wedge.
Mm.
Right? And it's not like it factors into it. I just wonder if that was him undermining himself at all.
Well, and maybe not even does Darrow use pinks, but are you willing to negotiate with somebody? Right? Like, let's say Cato said, hey, I want 100, I want 1,000,000 credits. Darrow might have said, you know what, fine, you saved my boy, here's 1,000,000 credits. But to then put human value to it is a different. So if Darrow had have agreed to say, let's say 1,000,000
where's
credits,
he going to get those pinks that are liberated?
Okay, so then you're going to give somebody pinks. Is that, yeah, you're right. That could have been, oh yeah, he does in his back pocket continue to use humans in this capacity.
It's a really subtle scene. I think there's more to it. I just don't know exactly what. I thought it was interesting. I don't think it factors in anywhere other than that. I just thought that the antagonism that Lysander is able to elicit from, or to, enact on and then get a rise out of Darrow so easily was interesting. And obviously we see him being able to do that in other ways at some point, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
But yeah, so then we get Cleastes, we get some cool world building, just more about Erebos and a few things, but I don't know if there's really much else in this Lysander.
The Oculus.
The Oculus. Oh, yeah.
The only other major thing to me was the Oculus, because again, this is where we come into like all of him seeing like what's going on in the war camp and everything. It just immediately comes to fruition. You know, we don't need to speculate. We know we're going to see it. Like, it's not like he's speculating, oh, this is going to happen in 10 years because of this thing right now with the docks on Ganymede. No, we don't care. It's just going to happen in the next couple pages. We'll figure it out.
Yeah,
we
see him figuring out the EMP.
Right. But the Oculus is interesting, and we do get another reference to that actually in this segment.
Yep. Yeah, we find out that Glarostes is the one that designed Oculus.
Right. And then Pax references it again.
Yep. Oh, I didn't pick up. Okay, yeah.
All right. Yeah, that's much later on. So now we're jumping. We're done.
Yeah. That's it. All right, let's abandon Lysander and Darrow.
We should just abandon them.
Pull the ripcord and parachute over to Mars.
Yes, where a shit show is happening. So I'm gonna grab water.
Yeah, I am too.
I've moved to the chocolates.
Into the camera drinking bourbon. Ow.
I moved to the less percent but chocolate stout, and it's going down too easily. So hold on.
Yeah. Ooh, yummy.